In November 2025, a new and serious problem started in East Asia. This problem was between Japan and China, two very strong countries in the region. What began as a simple comment from Japan's new leader quickly turned into a big danger for everyone. Japan's new prime minister is Sanae Takaichi. She started her important job recently. On November 7, 2025, Prime Minister Takaichi spoke in Japan's parliament. A parliament is a place where important government decisions are made and new laws are discussed. She talked about Taiwan. Taiwan is a large island that is very close to Japan. Prime Minister Takaichi made a very important statement. She said that if China used its army against Taiwan, it could create a survival-threatening situation for Japan. This means that such an action by China would be a very serious danger for Japan's own safety and future. This was a very strong and direct thing for a Japanese leader to say. For many decades, Japan usually did not speak so clearly about Taiwan. Japanese leaders often kept their words vague about how Japan would act in certain situations. This was a way to help keep peace and avoid making big problems. So, Prime Minister Takaichi's comment was a big change from Japan's usual way of speaking. China quickly became very angry about her words. For China, Taiwan is seen as a part of its country, like a province. China believes that no other country should talk about Taiwan's future or get involved in its affairs. China sees Taiwan as its own internal business. When Prime Minister Takaichi spoke, China saw it as an outside country interfering. China told Prime Minister Takaichi to take back her words and apologize, but she did not. She said that her comments truly showed Japan's long-held view and that she would not change what she said. Because she refused to take back her words, the problem grew even faster and became much more serious. It quickly turned into a big diplomatic crisis between the two powerful countries. This situation became very worrying for the whole region. By the middle of November, experts who study world politics said it was the worst problem between Japan and China in many years. It was the worst crisis since 2012, when there was another big problem about some disputed islands. The tension between Japan and China was very, very high. The conflict quickly moved beyond just angry words. People started to worry about possible military actions and problems for the economy. This new crisis became a serious danger for peace and stability in all of East Asia. The world watched closely to see what would happen next as this big problem continued to grow and affect many countries. 2. Japan's new leader. Japan had a new leader in October 2025. Her name was Sanae Takaichi. She became Japan's first female prime minister. Many people watched her closely because of her strong political ideas. Prime Minister Takaichi was known for her firm beliefs. She was not a politician who looked for the middle ground. She belonged to the nationalist wing of Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, known as LDP. Her ideas about Japan's history and its military were very clear. She thought Japan should have a more powerful army. She wanted to change Japan's constitution to fully recognize the self-defense forces and give them more capabilities. She often said that if there was an emergency in Taiwan, it would directly affect Japan. This showed her strong focus on national security. Her political journey was guided by former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was her mentor. Abe also pushed for Japan to have a more assertive military and a stronger foreign policy. Like Abe, Sanai Takaichi was a member of Nippon Kaigi. This is an influential group that holds ultra-nationalist views. She also regularly visited the controversial Yasukuni Shrine. This shrine remembers Japan's war dead, including some from World War II who were war criminals. Her visits caused anger in neighboring countries, especially China and South Korea. Critics often said she had different views on Japan's past wartime actions and colonialism. Takaichi's rise to power happened after the previous government, which included a more moderate party, ended. Her new group of supporting parties with the Japan Innovation Party was narrower and not as stable. This situation meant she might need more backing from the nationalist members of her own party to stay in power. Taking a strong stand against China, especially on Taiwan, could help her politically. By showing strength and not backing down, she aimed to keep the support of her political base. She did not want to appear weak when dealing with important international issues. For Sanai Takaichi, being firm on these matters was not only about government policy, but also a way to build her political strength at home. 3. China gets angry. China's government reacted very quickly when Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi spoke about Taiwan. Beijing became deeply angry. Chinese officials immediately stated that Taiwan is an inseparable part of China. They stressed that Taiwan's future is purely an internal Chinese matter. They firmly believed no other country should interfere in this sensitive issue. On November 10th, the Chinese Foreign Ministry expressed its strong disagreement with Japan's words. They emphasized again that Taiwan belongs completely to China. They warned that any attempts by outside forces to get involved would not be allowed. This first response showed how seriously China viewed the situation. As days passed, China's official language grew even tougher. On November 12th, China's State Council Taiwan Affairs Office released a powerful statement. They declared that if anyone challenged China's core interests or tried to block its goal of reunification, the Chinese government, its people, and its military would never accept it and never tolerate it. This was a very clear message of no compromise. Adding to the rising tension, a Chinese diplomat in Osaka, Consul General Chen Shui-jin, posted a controversial message online. He wrote a threatening comment: "The dirty head that sticks itself out must be cut off." This alarming post was soon deleted. Japan's government formally complained to China about these aggressive words. The Chinese Foreign Ministry then issued explicit warnings on November 13th. They demanded that Japan immediately correct and retract its remarks about Taiwan. They warned that if Japan did not, all the consequences shall be borne by Japan. They further stated a direct threat. Should Japan dare to resort to force and intervene in the Taiwan Strait, that would constitute an act of aggression. China will meet it with resolute counteractions. These were clear threats of military action. On November 14th, the Japanese ambassador to China was called to a meeting. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong spoke sternly to Ambassador Kenji Kanasugi. He explained that Taiwan is an untouchable red line and bottom line for China. This meant it was a sacred boundary that must not be crossed. Sun Weidong firmly reiterated that the Chinese people alone would decide how to resolve the Taiwan question, without any interference from outside forces. China's anger and firm resolve were now unmistakable. 4. Actions and threats. China did not only use strong words. Their actions became clearer and more serious. On November 14th, China's government warned its citizens. They said Chinese people should not travel to Japan. This message was very serious. The government said there were worsening public security problems and crimes targeting Chinese nationals. Many people understood this was a political message to put pressure on Japan. This warning was very bad for Japan's economy. Japan gets many visitors from China every year. Tourism is a big part of Japan's money. When China told its people not to go, it meant many fewer tourists for Japan. Big Chinese airlines quickly reacted. Airlines like Air China and China Eastern Airlines gave refunds. People could change their tickets for free if they planned to travel to Japan by the end of 2025. This showed how serious the travel warning was. It meant less money for Japan's shops, hotels, and travel companies, hurting the industry. China also showed its power with military actions. On November 16th, Chinese Coast Guard ships sailed near the Senkaku Islands. Japan calls these the Senkaku Islands. China calls them the Diaoyu Islands. These islands are disputed, meaning both countries claim them as their own. China said these ships were on a rights enforcement patrol, showing its firm claim to the islands in these sensitive waters. Then China announced more military exercises. From November 17th to 19, the Chinese military did live fire drills. These were held in the Yellow Sea. This area is near the sea borders of China and South Korea. During these drills, ships could not enter the exercise zone. This was a clear sign of China's military strength and its resolve to act. These actions were not just words. They were physical displays of power and disapproval, meant to send a strong message. The crisis grew quickly. China's government used economic pressure and strong military displays. This was a direct response to Japan's comments about Taiwan. The situation became more tense each day, moving beyond diplomatic talk to real threats. People around the world watched to see what would happen next between these two powerful countries in East Asia. 5. Old problems between two countries. Japan and China share a long and sometimes difficult history. Many problems between these two countries are not new. One important and old issue is the dispute over a group of small, uninhabited islands in the East China Sea. Japan calls these islands the Senkaku Islands. However, China calls them the Diaoyu Islands. Taiwan, which is an island close by, also claims these islands as its own territory. Japan states that it made these islands part of its territory in the year 1895. This was before the First Sino-Japanese War. China, on the other hand, believes that the islands have always been part of its land, historically linked to Taiwan. Evidence shows that Chinese people knew about and used these islands centuries ago, during the Ming and Qing dynasties. For a long time, these islands were just rocky outcrops. But in the early 1970s, important oil and natural gas deposits were found in the sea around them. This discovery made the islands much more valuable and a source of conflict. In 1972, Japan and China took a major step to normalize their diplomatic relations. During this historic time, they decided to set aside the island ownership problem. This meant they did not resolve who owned the islands, but agreed to not escalate the dispute. An important part of this agreement was Japan's statement that it understands and respects China's position that Taiwan is an inalienable part of the territory of the People's Republic of China. This understanding helped keep peace for many decades. An informal agreement meant both sides tried to avoid making the dispute worse. However, in 2012, the Japanese government purchased several of the islands from private owners. This action angered China greatly, leading to large protests across Chinese cities. Since then, Chinese government ships have increased their patrols near the islands. This continuous presence highlights that the dispute remains active and significant. Now, in November 2025, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's recent comments about Taiwan have brought these old problems to a critical point. China believes that Japan's new words break the promises made in the 1972 agreement. Beijing argues that by talking about possibly sending military forces to help Taiwan, Japan is not respecting China's claim over Taiwan. China sees Taiwan as a matter for Chinese people to decide, without outside interference. Japan's stronger stance on Taiwan's security is seen by China as a direct challenge to the fundamental understanding that guided their relations for half a century. These actions have made the long-standing tensions between Japan and China much more serious and potentially dangerous. 6. An unclear plan. For many years, there was a special way to keep peace around Taiwan. It was called strategic ambiguity. This meant that important countries, like Japan and the United States, did not say exactly what they would do if China used military force against Taiwan. This plan was very old. It started many decades ago. The main idea behind strategic ambiguity was to keep everyone guessing. If China did not know for sure if Japan or the United States would fight, it might not attack Taiwan. At the same time, if Taiwan did not know for sure if it would get help, it might not declare independence. This helped to stop both sides from making big, dangerous moves. It was a way to keep things calm and prevent a war. Past Japanese leaders before Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi always followed this unclear plan. They avoided saying anything too strong about Taiwan's defense. They understood that being unclear helped to keep peace in the region. However, Prime Minister Takaichi's recent comments in November 2025 changed everything. She said that if China attacked Taiwan, it could be a survival-threatening situation for Japan. This was not ambiguous. These words made Japan's position much clearer than before. This statement was a big change. It showed that Japan was moving away from its old policy of strategic ambiguity. Now Japan was telling the world, and especially China, that it might get involved if Taiwan was attacked. This made the situation very tense. China became very angry because it sees Taiwan as its own territory, and Japan's words felt like a direct challenge. Some people believe that the old plan of strategic ambiguity is no longer useful. China's military is much stronger now, and the world has changed. Japan's new, clearer stance means that the way countries deal with Taiwan is changing, and this makes the future very uncertain. 7. Why did this happen? The crisis made many people ask, why did this happen now? There were different ideas about Prime Minister Takaichi's actions and China's strong reaction. One idea was that Prime Minister Takaichi made a mistake. She has strong nationalist beliefs. Perhaps she did not expect China to react with such anger. She might have thought her words were only about legal rules in Japan. She might not have seen them as a big political challenge to China's views. This could mean the problem grew partly because of misunderstandings and different expectations. Another idea was that Japan planned this change in policy. For some time, Japan has been moving toward a stronger defense. China's growing military power made Japan think more about its own safety. So Takaichi's words were not a mistake. They were an intentional signal. Japan wanted to show China and the United States that it would take an active role in Taiwan if needed. This strong stance also helped Takaichi politically. It showed her strength to her supporters. She also aimed to show that her government would follow a different path from earlier, more careful governments, helping her gain support from her party's nationalist members. China's reaction was also very severe. Why was this? One reason is that China might see Japan's words as part of a bigger plan. China believes Japan and the United States are trying to limit China's growth. For China, Taiwan is not just an island. It is a very important issue for China's national unity and government. Any talk about outside military help for Taiwan is seen as a direct challenge to China's most important interests. Also, China's government faces pressure from its own people. Many Chinese citizens have strong nationalistic feelings. The government must show it is tough and protects China's interests. If it appears weak, people might criticize it. So China's leaders felt they had to react with force. This included starting military exercises and telling citizens not to travel to Japan. This crisis also highlights the important relationship between the U.S. and Japan. Japan is a key strategic partner for the U.S. in East Asia. The U.S. has many military forces in Japan. So when Japan's leader speaks about Taiwan, it also sends a message about what the U.S. might do. Takaichi's words made the message against China stronger. It made it clearer that Japan would consider helping Taiwan, even if the U.S. continued its policy of strategic ambiguity. This policy means the U.S. does not say clearly if it would fight for Taiwan. Japan's new, clearer words changed this long-standing plan, making the situation in the region much more tense. 8. What happens next? The crisis between Japan and China in November 2025 was very serious. People wondered what will happen next. There are different ways this problem could go. One way is that the two countries could talk and make things better. Japan might change its strong statements about Taiwan. China might stop its military shows and lift the travel warning for Japan. Both sides could say they won something. This has happened before in past problems between them. This would mean they agree to calm down and find peace. Another way is that the tensions could stay high for a long time. Japan and China might not fight, but they also might not be friends. They could keep their military ready and continue to warn each other. This would be a period of cold relations. It would cost both countries money and make things difficult, but it would stop a real war. This situation could last for many months or even years. The worst thing that could happen is a real fight. China could send more military ships and planes near Taiwan and the disputed islands. Japan could make its plans to defend Taiwan very clear. The United States might also have to say exactly what it would do. If this happens, there is a big risk of an accident or a mistake. A small mistake could quickly lead to a real war. This would be very bad for the whole world. This crisis is a very serious warning for everyone. It shows how easily peace can be broken in East Asia. Countries need to be careful with their words and actions. They must try hard to talk to each other and stop problems from growing. The future of peace in this part of the world depends on what choices Japan and China make now. It is important for leaders to find ways to live together without fighting. What do you think should happen next to make peace in East Asia?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.